single expert or it's anyone who is involved in supporting the sports person. They can be a member. So the athlete, the sports person, nutritionist, coaches, sports medicine specialist, physiotherapist, uh, physical education teachers, psychologists, sports dentists, strength and conditioning experts, and any other sports professionals can be a member of this association. We would like to also mention our super achievers who are life members or members of this association who have done a wonderful, job and who have contributed to some of sports people achievements in this year. First, we have Mihira Khopkar, who's a lead sports nutritionist at HN Reliance Hospital. And her contribution was, she was one of the nutritionists um, for Neeraj Chopra, who's the Olympic gold medalist in this year's Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. Then we have Ms. Shona Prabhu, who was a nutritionist for Indian hockey team and Delhi Capitals in the IPL, and she featured also in a book named Behind a Sports Champion, and she also so the contribution of nutritionists has been featured in this book. Then we have Namrata Pramod, who is a senior nutritionist at Sports Authority of India at Bangalore Center. She also contributed her nutrition knowledge in for Indian hockey team, and she also published a very unique booklet on local food and travel guidelines for Olympic-bound athletes Tokyo 2020, which is published by Sports Authority of India. We also have Ms. Vani Bhushanam, who is a senior nutritionist in the Sports Authority of India at Delhi. And she also contributed her nutrition knowledge for Indian boxing, women's boxing team, and especially the champion Lavlina Burgan. Then we have another life member from ASNFS, Ms. Mitali Ambekar, who is a nutritionist at Army Sports Institute in Pune, Maharashtra. And she recently completed her diploma in sports nutrition from International Olympic Committee. So these are the great achievements by some of our life members from this association. So we congratulate them. I would like to share some activities done by the association. We try to bring the sports science and sports physiology on one platform, and we have conducted several webinars over the years and brought in a lot of experts from these fields also and share their experience. A unique course conducted especially for coaches and physical education teachers in collaboration with Chandrasekhar Agashe College of Physical Education, Fundamentals of Sports Nutrition Coach, which was conducted in both languages, English, Hindi, and two batches were conducted under this course, and we had almost more than 100 participants across India. Another unique course launched by ASNFS is the certificate course Sports Specific Nutrition Management, which has 16 modules spread over 4 months. And our first batch completed which was started in the month of May and ended in August 2021. And we had almost 47 participants across India and abroad who completed the course successfully. And we received amazing response from this participant. And the second batch we are starting in the month of November. The date is 19 November. It's a small video showing what to expect in this course. This course not only has, the different sports category which we easily learn, but this course also has a unique module on sport-specific nutrition for Indian sports, which is an amazing addition to a sport. And I think in India, this is only one course which has added this module. So you can enroll for this course and visit our website for more details. So let's, welcome our speakers for today's topic, which is coach, athlete, parent relationship, role of psychology. We have two speakers today. First one is Mugdha Bavre, who is the founder of Disha Counseling Center and Mind Sports, which is a cell that works for mental training of athletes. She's a consultant sports psychologist and also an international swimmer who has received Shiv Chhatrapati State Sports Award for excellence in swimming. She has worked with Mumbai Cricket Association, Olympic Gold Quest, BCCI, Vidarbha Cricket Association for Bengal, and JSW Sports. She has more than 20 years of experience in this field and trained athletes across all sports like archery, weightlifting, wrestling, chess, table tennis for international events like Olympic Games, Asian Games, World Championships, Premier League. The next speaker we have is Vardayani Gorhe. She has done her master's in sports psychology from Loughborough University, UK. She's founder of Mind First Performance Psychology. She's also a visiting faculty at Manipal University and a consultant psychologist for cricketers, tennis players, swimmers, young as well as elite athletes. She has been a sports psychologist with the Army Rowing Note and also for the Asian Games rowing team in the year 2018. She's associated with the Mumbai Cricket Association as a sports psychologist. Other than that, she's also a recreational tennis player. I welcome both the speakers for today's session. And now I think you can take over the spotlight. I request all the participants to please mute themselves and also, off their videos. Over to you, speakers.
Thank you. Thanks, Apurva, for the wonderful introduction.
You so
Okay. I'll just share the screen before we start. Great. Thank you everyone for joining. And we both, Mugdha and I, are very happy to be here and take you through this topic, which we both thought was very critical and essential to speak about, because as sports psychologists, when we interact with athletes, I think what was also important to understand is the relationship between the coach, the parent, and the athlete. Because if we train the athlete in one way, but if the coach and parents have different ideas to train the athlete, things don't go the right way, right? So hence, it's important for us as psychologists also to give this triad, as we call it, a very important position, and take that perspective into consideration. So thank you so much again for inviting us. And before we go on, this is the first question we would like to ask, and I think everyone can unmute and answer, like raise your hands, unmute and answer this, because I think we'll get different perspectives from all of y'all, since I think I'm expecting people from different backgrounds here. So when we talk about sports, when we talk about performance, and when we talk about athletic performance and in general, what do you think would be the major reasons of non-performance? Like, why don't athletes perform? So we could get different perspectives. We'll just list it down there. Please raise your hands and answer. Yes, Geeta?
Hi, say undiagnosed nutritional deficiency.
Okay, all right. That could be one point. Anyone else? what all you come across, like even in your practice, or even if you're an athlete yourself, or if you have been an athlete, what do you think would be the major reasons of not performing? Yes, Daksha.
Ma'am, it can be inferiority complex or lack of confidence.
Lack of confidence. All right. Okay. Thanks, Daksha. Yeah, Tejas.
Anxiety on the last day of the competition, too much anxiety.
Okay, too much anxiety on the last day of the competition. Yes. Anyone else? We could get different any other opinions as well. Even
Pressure from the parents also, that you have to win and you have to get certain goals
Correct.
or achievements.
right, pressure from parents. Yes, 100%. Sneha Divekar.
If just in case if the athlete is injured previously, again to come back and perform, I think PTSD, I'm sure it will definitely affect his future mind, to play confidently next time.
Sure. Yes, that too. Yeah. So a previous injury and a comeback. So that's
Too many
definitely
competitions.
too many competitions. Yes. So the
See,
pressure
kids,
of
especially
dealing with
kids.
them. Yeah.
Yes, we see especially kids dealing with that because parents just take them all over the place.
Mhm.
So they're supposed to perform back to back.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, a lot of things on the on the plate, and then you end up coming under pressure as well because of too much of expectation and expecting to perform in every competition. Yeah, definitely. Anything else? So we have parental pressure that we got, injury, too many competitions, anxiety just before the tournament. And I think the first one, someone spoke about fear, like the fear, right? Yeah. Anything else? Okay. When you think of when you think of these major events, that now say the Olympics also, we saw the Olympics, or we even see grassroots level. I think, has someone shared something? Yeah. All right. Sorry, I thought someone shared something on the chat. But we also see people at grassroots levels or at elite levels. Not, I mean, there would be reasons of not performing consistently or not performing at all. And I think, yes, injury definitely is a main reason. The comeback, the pressure of the comeback, fear of failures, all those things definitely contribute to this. But yeah, so these are the main things what we have listed down. Like there's fear of failure, fear of actually not only just failure but also just maintaining that position. Okay, so I remember talking to one athlete just a day before yesterday, and the fear of not even losing a match, or just losing one match, is so high because of the streak that she's been maintaining for the last tournaments. So they played, I think she's played 4 or 5 tournaments post COVID, post lockdown opening, and she won all the 4. So now the pressure to maintain that streak is so high that she is actually trembling under that kind of anxiety. So you have such cases even at grassroots level. So you can just imagine the fear of failure even at an elite level. So yes, definitely that's one of the biggest demands we see with the athletes, fear of failure. And also that links to the self-expectation, that how much pressure one puts on oneself by assuming that their ability is high. Okay, that could be one thing, that I have a very good ability to beat this player, but maybe that wouldn't be the case. Or because of so much pressure, they might doubt themselves so much that on the day of the match or on the day of the bout or the event, they may just not perform. So self expectation itself is such a big enemy, sometimes, because unrealistic goal setting ultimately damages one's own expectations and one's own ability to perform on the same day. All right. Apart from that, definitely something what we're going to address today as well, expectations from others. So others' expectations is I think even more a big challenge for many athletes, more a big demand for many athletes, because especially at the younger age, when they have parental pressure, they have peer pressure, of course, coaches pressure also to an extent. And then, they start self-doubting, or they start, saying that, okay, there are so many people who are having expectations from me, but if I'm not able to perform, then how am I going to manage? Okay, so all those things definitely would also link to non-performance or no performance. Pressure to succeed, and I'm talking not from a competitive perspective, but from a career perspective. Now, this happens, I don't know if you guys have come across athletes who are teenagers, who have maybe just passed their 10th, or they're in their 12th, and then there is that pressure that whether I should get completely to academics or continue my sports or do both. So there's a lot of pressure to just succeed. Okay, it's not only succeed in sports, but succeed in academics also. So that part also plays an important role in non-performance, or lowering the performance of an athlete. We mentioned about injury and the comeback. Again, there is a pressure to do very well, and this usually stems out of self-expectation, because they may have left at a high when they got injured, and suddenly there's that expectation that I won't be there. So the bounce back should be quick, otherwise someone else will overtake my position. All those things definitely play an important role in how the mind works, especially when they are just coming back from an injury, and when the goals have to be even more realistic. So when I work with athletes who are injured, the important phase would be towards the end, or towards the towards the end of rehabilitation, when they really need to understand that, okay, now I'm going to go back onto the ground, but at that moment, how my mindset should be. Should it just be like go through a full throttle and finish everything off, or should it be like, okay, go step by step? Now, all this depends on, of course, the rehabilitation process that they are going through, how critical the injury is, and how their previous experience of injuries have been. Okay, so that's how the mindset develops at that moment. But it's very important for them also to figure things out in their process, in their way, because every individual recovers very differently, both physically as well as psychologically. Okay, so that is again, after a comeback, getting into the first match after the injury is definitely there's a lot of pressure existing for the athlete. Last common one what I could list is pressure of selection, and I think this is one of the major things, especially in cricket, when we see cricketers who are like 15, 16, who are just waiting to get into that under 19 squad. There's so much of pressure of selection, and I remember speaking to one of the girls who I was working with, and she says that every time she's on the nets, like at practice, she'll always have an eye on the gate, means the entry gate of the academy, because somewhere on the back of the mind, towards the beginning of the season, she knows that, okay, ek do baar to selectors will come only to see what these people are up to, what are they up to, and everything. So much of pressure that even if they may not come on that day, but it's always on their mind. That also somewhere subconsciously will impact the way they play even a match, because in the match as well, of course, there's a more possibility of the selectors coming and watching the match. But just imagine the amount of space your head is consuming, or an athlete's head consumes, with the amount of pressure that they have. Okay, so having said all of these things, like the major demands, a major understanding that everything stems out of thinking and leads to something like fear, or something like worry, something like anxiety, something which is negative in nature, of course, but it's almost somewhere related to anxiety, pressure, worries, and all these factors, which are mostly feelings, mostly all those physiological reactions that happen in your body. Okay, and that, of course, will lead to change in movement, change in the way you hold your equipment, and and then of course non-performance or lower lack of performance or just drop in the performance. Okay, but all this stems from pressure, right? And this leads us to the major reasons, okay, of what contributes to all this, the thinking, the fear. Okay, it's all about the climate this athlete is developing in. Okay, it's not just about how they build their mind. It's not like an internal thing, right? It's the environment. It's what kind of teachers they have grown up with, what kind of coaches that they have grown up with, how the parents react to failures and successes. All those things contribute to how they view all these things. Okay, so today I can see something as a something which is, which induces fear of failure as a threat. Like I'll run away from, if I'm a batsman, I'll run away from this situation wherein I'm facing a bowler. So I'm mentally not at all there because I don't like this bowler. This bowler has taken my wickets, like, left, right, and center. So mentally, I have made an exit from that match. And that leads to my fall of wicket. Again, I am in that same vicious cycle of thinking, this bowler is always going to take my wicket. Okay, so that is where I see the situation as a threat. But I can also see it as a challenge, saying that, okay, last 10 outings, this person has taken my wickets. Now let me change the game. This change, okay, is not only internally given, but it's also because of the environment. And the major people contributing to the environment of an athlete in the growing phase or even later is the coach and the parent. Okay, that triad is what we are going to speak about today. And that's why we feel, as psychologists, we feel that triad is very critical, because right from, of course, home environment is mainly maintained by the parents, and the academy environment or the growth from a technical standpoint, from a physical standpoint, everything is taken care of by the coach. And these two people definitely play even a major role. If I think all of the nutritionists here also will agree that they play a major role in educating the athlete on, psychology is important, nutrition is important, so you need to go to these people. All right, if that is not happening, that player is not definitely going to look out for a psychologist or nutritionist, and unless they are, like, adult enough to do it. But from a grassroots perspective, the triad is critical. Okay, so hence we are focusing on how not just mental training for the athlete is important, but how these two people, these two parties involved in the triad, how their behavior, their action, and training them also, or making them understand the importance of these areas of mental training, why is that also important? Okay, so hence the triad is important. Just to run you through a model, which is like a developmental model given by Williman and Lavely. They both are sports psychologists and have written a very good paper, in fact, extensive research on the developmental model of sports, and where in the athlete develops from a very initiation stage to a elite stage from the psychological perspective as well. So what is critical here to understand is the psychological level, be it from childhood to adulthood, all that is mentioned. But also what is critical to see is who are the people from a psychosocial level who play a major role in influencing this athlete. Okay, from the initiation stage, which is the first stage, like even the introduction of a bat or of a racket, all that is definitely fueled by the parents, siblings, peer groups. Okay, but parents are there. Okay, now that transition from the initiation to a developmental stage wherein they start knowing the sport better and they start playing it competitively. Okay, now if you see that transition there, the coach and the parents are the main people. Of course, peer pressure will always be there, but coach and the parents, they play a major role in influencing major decisions taken in, especially the developmental phase, which we technically call as the grassroots or a little above grassroots. All right, so hence the triad is critical. Okay. Yeah, so something like that, which I found a very good very good picture on the internet. I really liked it because when we speak about an athlete as a plant, it's important to know who nurtures it. Okay, it's important to understand, right? So of course the parents, if now what is the important part, takeaway from this picture is, if the athlete is someone who thrives when the parent and coaches are aligned and in supporting and nurturing the athlete. Okay, the parent is who supports the coach in every aspects regarding the sport. Okay, and nurtures the athlete at the home environment. Okay, and the coach is someone who trains the athlete technically, but also supports the parent in the holistic development of the child. Now this is a very idealistic scenario which we can see here, and the takeaway is everyone should be on the same page. Okay, very like I said, it's a very idealistic scenario, but what from my experience, when I see some athletes suffering for some reason, like psychologically, or they're struggling to get over certain failures in their sporting life or otherwise, usually there is friction between the two parties, the three parties, or somewhere. Okay, hence developing a strong climate here is very important. Okay, so how is the question. So now what I'm going to do in today's my part of today's class is just give you an understanding into why is mental training important, but also what are the major demands in these mental skills areas, okay, that we speak as sports psychologists. From the athlete's perspective, we saw the demands, but from a coach's perspective and from a parental perspective, let's see how these demands are critical and how somewhere parents and coaches can fuel it through their environment. Okay, so what could be the reasons of the failures from, say, a coach's perspective or from a parental perspective? This is a very good model given by Harvard and others. And what it says is, when the player is at the center, we have 5 major mental skills, just like physical skills. What we have your speed, endurance, but we have mental skills around the player, which develops the player into a much more mentally stronger individual. And that is important to nurture. So when we see the sun and the water that is given by the parents, what is the content inside that should be these 5 C's according to the psychological perspective. Okay, one is commitment. Commitment includes everything surrounding discipline, surrounding the way the athlete sets goals, how committed the athlete is to the practice, as well as to performing well at a good level. Okay, you can say the negatives which we can see in an athlete from a commitment perspective could be something around the discipline and goal area. But I want to pose this question to everyone. When we speak about commitment from an athlete, what negatives have you seen in this? That means, how do you think is a non-committed athlete? How would you view a non-committed athlete to be? Someone who's lower on commitment. How do you think this person or this athlete would be?
It could be very casual.
Yes, very casual.
Not motivated enough.
Not motivated enough. Yes.
Missing practice sessions.
Yes, missing practice sessions.
Falling ill.
Okay. Someone who comes late to practice as well.
Yes.
Finding reasons for not performing.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, giving excuses.
Yeah, illness, like I said.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. My stomach is paining. I'm not coming today. That times. Yeah, definitely. But I'll tell you the funny part about such athletes. They want to do everything. They want to win. They want to do everything. But all these things are a little, up and down, right? So we would call this athlete as a poorly committed athlete. Someone who is, of course, the opposite would be someone who is a better committed athlete, right? But how do you think athletes change from an athlete perspective? Just talking about athlete right now. So how do you think they change? Like, what do you think could be done so that they change their commitment?
Encouragement,
Okay.
healthy
Okay.
competition by peers,
Yes.
amongst peers.
Yes.
Seeing
Yes.
better behavior from other athletes.
Okay.
Getting inspired from that.
Okay. Yes. So kind of modeling, like modeling other athletes. Yes. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. So that's commitment. Okay. So that's one C, what usually even in sports psychology, we address that through goal setting and setting the proper goals, or viewing the good time, and time management and so on. Right. Next, we come to communication. Okay. Now, again, a very critical factor in the triad also, but communication overall from the athlete's perspective, like communicating what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what they know about their own game, what they have seen and they want to share. All right. So communication also is a very critical element, because that itself shows what is on their mind. Because of course, as psychologists and as the common perception goes, we are not mind readers. So they need to tell us or tell the parent or the coach about what they are experiencing, how do they feel, how did they analyze the game. Okay. And somewhere, personally speaking, when I work with the grassroots, that is somewhere lacking. Or it definitely goes through phases, but then somewhere that itself shows how confident they are or how committed they are and so on. Okay, so communication also is a very important and a critical element from a mental training perspective. And it shows a lot of things of how confident they look or how confident they are about their own abilities. So how would you again define as someone who is poor in communication, especially within the sporting environment, in the sporting ecosystem? How would you define an athlete who's poor in communication? And here, I'm definitely not talking about language barriers and all. I'm just talking about communication bit from all these other C's that we are seeing here.
They do not interact much with the coach and take feedback and give feedback, that sort of a person.
Yes, great. Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Sometimes they're asked to play a certain position, especially in team games. They don't want to play, but they are not ready to say that I don't want to play this. This is not something that I want to do.
Yeah.
So
yes.
just passively accepting whatever is being told to them.
Correct. Yes. Okay. That's a good point there as well. Anyone else?
Sometimes they also don't share, if they have any pain or injury. They feel, if they communicate, they will be laughed upon or they'll feel inferior. So they don't share, what they are feeling. Even
Correct.
Sometimes they are hungry, but they will not tell the coach that they're hungry or they're thirsty and they want to drink water. So that communication also doesn't happen.
True. Okay, great. All right, that's also important, because again, it's like I said, it's linked to the other C's that you can see here, but it is also a very important tool to express your mindset or your mental state. Yeah.
So sometimes they might just be scared of the coach, because I've seen some coaches who keep screaming and then they just don't want to open their mouth, fear that they would be benched.
Yeah.
Or they just don't want to be yelled at in front of everyone else.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm just going to come to that point a little later when we speak about how the demands from the parent and the coach's perspective, and I put that specific point there.
I think some of the athletes also, they don't communicate with their fellow athletes,
Yeah, peers.
Peers or even parents, that they don't want to play. Sometimes they are forced by the parents and they don't like the sport. There are many athletes who come to us also and tell we don't like it, but sometimes the communication is there, sometimes they don't communicate with their parents or even their peers also.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll come to that in a bit also, because I've seen so many such examples, even from a personal standpoint, like wherein they come and tell it to us, but then they're like, please don't tell my mom I told you, but this is how it is, like that way. But yes, communication, like I said, is a big tool. Then we move on to concentration, which is focus. And again, like someone, of course, I'm sure again, I'll ask you the same question. How would you note, or how would you see an athlete who is low on focus or concentration?
The coach is teaching something and the athlete, is playing in the mud, or, there will be some, small things. We do notice that the athlete is not concentrating on what the coach is telling, or, what
Yes.
is going on the field.
Yes, right.
Mugdha, but what about genetic makeup? And sometimes I think attention span can be quite
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we are not questioning that.
personality types.
Of course, but again, there are a few things that can be managed, and that's what we speak about when it comes to concentration. Like in the game, if there are, of course, we are not talking about any personality disorders, like, or something like ADHD. That definitely
Oh,
would
no,
be
I'm
an
not
outlier.
referring to that.
Yeah.
I'm generally saying, just the genetic makeup, and sometimes it is an also default inbuilt
Yes.
endowment.
Yeah. That also will come into play. Yeah, definitely. Yes. Okay. Moving on again, control could be control over thoughts and emotions. Okay, so again, a very important thing for you to develop into a mentally stronger individual. If you can manage your thoughts better, manage your feelings better, especially on field, and that itself will lead you to a better performance or a better performer. Right. Again, if you could recall, or maybe your observation, anything wherein you feel that an athlete lacks or like has lower control over feelings and emotions, what would be your observation, or what would you have seen in such an athlete?
Please, can you repeat that?
Okay, someone who has lower control over their feelings, like how they cannot manage the feelings on the field. If you have, what do you think? Like, how do such athletes like look like, or like what do they behave like?
Emotional.
Yes.
Aggressive.
Lack of composure and poise.
Okay.
Very aggressive.
Yes.
They will give up very easily and they'll get anxious very easily.
Okay. Yes. Okay. And that can impact, of course, their game, but athletes who have lesser control over their feelings and thoughts will allow it to impact the game forever, for the whole time. Okay, so there's something called as a bounce back, or a resilient athlete who can like manage everything and get back to the game. They have better control, or better management skills on their emotions and thought processes. All right. And yes, of course, that will lead to again the last C, which is confidence. Again, someone who is high on confidence, or like who has a good amount of confidence. Again, I won't say like higher confidence, but someone who has a good confidence, again, is definitely some athlete who is mentally stronger and tougher, right? But like I said, all this only will matter, or only will get developed, especially in a grassroots level athlete, if the parent and the coach also plays a very strong role in developing those skills within an athlete. Okay, so of course there would be outliers. There will be players who are so confident that even if the coach and parents say something else, they do it their way. All right, there will be such athletes, but all we are trying to say is like the importance of linking the coach, parent, and athlete to be on the same page when it comes to even mental training is also very important. So how do you think the parental behavior and the coach's behavior impacts these 5 areas? All right, so we'll see it one by one in a quick way. When it comes, we have just given few examples that I have experienced in my practice as well, and how that impacts the player's mindset ultimately. Okay, so when it comes to demands from a commitment per se, from a coach's perspective, we have three things. I have listed down three things what I have observed. One is coach ends up setting a lot of outcome based goals even in practice. Means, what is an outcome goal? Does anyone know what is an outcome goal? How would you define an outcome goal to be?
I think result oriented.
Yes, yeah, more result oriented and not focusing on a process which maybe practice needs more.
And not focusing on learning the skill.
Correct. Yes, not focusing on learning the skill, focusing more on the win loss, or like who's better than whom. So hence, setting outcome oriented goals for athletes. That is one, again, a big red flag when it comes to how committed the athlete can grow to be. Because if they are not getting the desired results, of course, then there will be backlash from the coach, which again would lead the athlete to be lesser committed to the sport. Okay, so that could be one reason for the athletes' commitment levels. I'm not discounting the fact that the athlete themselves will be lesser committed, for internally. But from an external or an environmental standpoint, this is one thing what it needs to be considered, which is setting outcome-oriented goals, which should be avoided. Being irregularly disciplined themselves means they themselves don't turn up on time. Coaches themselves don't have a commitment to the way that they are approaching or doing the coaching. So that, of course, players look to the coaches as role models. So hence, if that is not being in place, then of course that will also impact how the player's commitment level is. And something related to the first point I mentioned, setting comparative goals. So I'm known coaches who say that kal usse acha karna hai, means you have to do better than that person today, or like the other athlete, or this person. So that is comparison. And again, if that's not happening, it's because of different skill sets, different skill levels, athletes get demotivated, and then again it impacts the commitment level of the athlete. All right, so this is 3 points what I could I could find through my experience from the coach's perspective. Same thing goes from a parent's perspective. Okay, how does the parental influence over the commitment come? Okay, one is when they only ask about winning or losing in the game. So match hai tabhi they'll come and ask the player about, acha, how did you win, did you lose? Otherwise, overall on practice day, there's no interaction regarding the sport. This also can lead to lower commitment from the athlete. Okay, every time just speaking about ranking seeds or how much progress you have made from this numerical perspective, and not from us, from not a technical, but just from a growth standpoint overall. Okay, and the third point is they themselves not being committed to their exercise. Okay, this is a very important point. I think many of them will laugh at it, are parents ka exercise or bacche ka sports se kya lena dena, but then that itself shows the kid at home saying that parents are not doing this regularly, so why should I also go and do this regularly, that way. So that also plays a very important role, because at home parents are role models. We can say that for every child, parents and the elderlies are definitely role models. So if the commitment level has to be reflected, it is more to do with how the parental way of well-being or like how they look at well-being. Okay, so I remember one boy coming to me and saying that he's been put on a nutrition plan by a nutritionist, and he can't follow it properly because at home they always have samosas coming in because the parents love it. So again, the inclination to remain committed to it is also on the environment created at home. So that's where it really hit me, that saying that okay, somewhere even the parents also need to know that this is okay, if this boy needs to go and represent India, that's what they're dreaming of, but this is also what they need to cut down on. All right. So again, all those things do matter, right? Okay, moving on. Communication. This is the second point what I mentioned. From a coach's perspective, it's always sometimes negative feedback, which is important. Okay, when as a psychologist, when I hear coaches giving negative feedback in a very good way, it's important. But when it becomes personal in nature, that's when it gets, into a not so good space. So hence communication, why the child steps back is when if such attacks are made. Say, for example, if a player did not play well in a couple of matches, and then the coach, when giving a negative feedback, also comments something on maybe the body shape or anything. You're not so fit, that's why all this happens. Okay, so that also impacts how much trust or how much rapport, whatever has been developed in between the coach and the athlete, kind of goes a little down. Okay, blames the parents in front of athletes. This also happens, and there again the athlete could go a little back foot pe ki like, acha, my coach doesn't trust my parents, and then there is friction in between them. That also matters a lot, like how courteous or how well that they are, even if the coach doesn't agree to how the parents are, how coach speaks about the parents in front of the athlete also matters. Okay, next is does not communicate a lot about positive feedback. Negative feedback sab hota hai, but positive feedback is not given. This also could, of course, ultimately impacts the confidence, but it also impacts the way they are speaking back to the coach, because they expect a positive feedback as athletes, but they're not getting, and then the communication channel weakens. Same goes with the parents. I'm just, I want to show a video. I think I will. It'll take some time. Just give me a second. Okay, there's a very nice video. I don't know if you'll have seen this. It's called The Ride Back Home. Okay, after a practice session. It's a conversation between the father and the son.
So, not your best practice. Can we agree on that? It seemed like you wanted to hang out with your friends more than practice. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. Just tell me. Because you can do that anytime. Maybe we can skip your next game. Because choosing to waste your time, that's one thing. But wasting my time and your coach's time, that's selfish. You don't care about other people. You don't care about hard work. You don't care about teamwork. That's why you're always on the bench, every time it matters. So, if you want to keep playing, you need to take a good hard look at yourself and think about that.
Okay. Yeah, again, it was a very worth sharing video, because I thought we'll understand how it impacts the player. Ultimately, how athletes speak, how athletes, just 1 second, share how the parents speak to the athletes. It definitely matters. And that's what we say, that when the parents communicate certain things with the athlete, it matters, and all that impacts their mental well-being, their mental health. And it's important for all of us also as the support staff to have that pure communication, which is more oriented towards the welfare of the client. right? So again, from the parental perspective, like I said, it only speaks post loss, doesn't praise after win. That is also something, it's not the healthy way of communication. Speaks about self-sacrifices. If you see in the video also, he says that you're wasting my time. Some people, I know some coaches also some parents also speak about how much money they're spending in front of the athlete. Again, that puts excessive pressure on the athletes, saying that my parents have spent so much for me and I haven't done anything, that way. Always blames the coach. Again, if the coach is putting in good effort, but still parents blame the coach in front of the child every time. Again, that also creates a poor motivational environment for the athletes. Okay, let's move on quickly to control. What more can, how does the coach, again, what can impact the way that the athletes start feeling weaker from the emotional side. They shout at athletes for even smaller mistakes. That also puts the athletes into a back foot. But that means that even the coach exhibits being a role model who says it's okay to shout. It's okay to like scream for smaller petty issues. Okay, so again, the second point is like having outbursts on the field, which is okay. Like, they say it's fine. But then again, here we can also speak of course, we have lesser time now, but we can also understand the coach's mental health here. Why is that also important? Why is that also important to be considered? All right. Then if the coach does not encourage the athletes to share emotions, so if someone comes and shares something, but the coach says, "Are kya bekar ki baatein kar rahe ho?" Like, and I've heard this personally. It's not, you don't have to share all this with me, and all those things. Again, that puts the athlete again into a back foot or into a shell. All right. Again, parents, from their perspective, it dismisses negative thoughts and feelings at home, like, saying that you don't have to speak about all this ghar pe, don't have to speak about all your personal things here. Again, it's impacting the way they are expressing. So if they don't express to someone, they'll express it, or like the athletes express it on the field by having an outburst themselves. Okay, parents who shout at kids, cry. Okay, bade bache nahi rote, that kind of attitude. It also somewhere negatively impacts the athletes. Shouts from the sidelines, again, something what I think everyone would have seen in the games. Making personal attacks is what I've also seen. The father shouting at the player, and I still remember that scene wherein the player hurled the racket back to the father, saying that, don't talk to me like that. And I was first of all, I was taken aback because that was my first game as a psychologist, and this guy comes and just gives it back. But then, yeah, that happens, that all those things are a result of a lot of pent up stuff that happened earlier between the parent and the child. Confidence from a coach's perspective, kind of summary of what we just saw, but again singles out athlete while sharing negative feedback. That directly impacts the confidence of the athlete. And the post-match analysis is not done rationally, but it's done more emotionally by, again, subjecting athletes to like a lot of emotional hurling. All those things impacts the athlete's confidence. Calls the athlete loser after one loss. It has a direct impact on the confidence from even the parents' perspective, or even in a coach's perspective. Recalls all mistakes after the athlete has made one mistake in the game, or if after the athlete loses and comes back home, and then I know parents who keep on repeating that you have lost so many games in this year, how are you going to even become a professional player, blah blah blah. It has a direct impact on their self-confidence. Now, all this, we just went through is the reality, right? But what we are going to now see is how something like positive coaching, what Mukta is going to speak about, how is that going to make an impact overall from a coach's standpoint, especially, and also from a parental standpoint, how they can come together to develop a better environment, right? So Mugdha, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll operate the screen?
Yeah, I'll do that.
I have, okay.
Okay, I missed out on focus, but focus also is the same thing. Sorry, I just missed out on the focus bit. But it's just that, like how loss of focus, like I think Apura spoke about distractions. It's something like that, only like distracting the athlete from, the game or from the practice. So all those things are the demands. But I think Mukta, you take over and yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Vardhani. And I think, Vardhani, you have just given the introduction of this topic and beautifully covered all the demands of the sport. What I'll be teaching and telling you all today is, first of all, when I take workshops, maybe even for the coaches or for the parents, I think majority of you are all nutritionists out here. But what I always say that coaches and parents are doing a commendable work. They're taking so much of efforts, because I remember when I was an athlete myself, I really used to feel very jealous of parents and coaches, because I used to see them sitting on the deck since I was a swimmer. And I always felt that, coaches had only one work to give us the workouts and just watch us literally die every day in water. Or even parents, when it used to come to the parents, that, just parents have only one role, where they just have to travel with the athletes and really enjoy new places that they travel. But now when I'm on the other side of the table and I'm playing a dual role of a sports psychologist as well as a sport parent, I really understand the kind of efforts that the coaches and parents also need to take, so that can actually help athletes develop in their athletic performance. And as a sports psychologist, we always believe that if we can help these two areas, like coaching as well as parenting, we can definitely do a wonderful work where we can actually align the talent of the athletes if they are given a right support and the environment. So what we are going to talk about today, I'll briefly cover about what positive coaching is all about, what are the effective ways of coaching, and elements of positive coaching. Now, though you are, you can read the word coaching out here, it's not only for the coaches, but all of this is applicable even to the parents. So one of the main things that Vardhani has covered is we have seen commitment. We've seen those 5 C's: commitment, confidence, control, communication. If we actually look at it, and we have, as parents also, as coaches also, we have a lot many expectations from our athletes, that they have to abide by the rules, or they have to be more disciplined, they have to be more committed to the sport. When you actually really look at all of these aspects are really linked to the kind of feedback that the athletes get. We are looking at the role of coaches and parents, and we've just seen those 5 C's. Now, why do we feel that, there is lack of commitment? Maybe as Vardhani has also asked certain questions to you all. Why there is lack of commitment? Most of you all have said, that athletes are scared to open up. Athletes are scared to even express what they are feeling or what they are going through. So what stops them basically is the kind of feedback, knowingly or unknowingly, that they get from the coaches as well as the parents. And that's exactly what I'm going to cover in positive coaching today. And the kind of feedback that they get has a major impact on how we are actually developing them into these 5 C's that Vardhani has just spoken. Yeah. Next slide, Vardhani. So what I'm showing you over here is, this is what is called an athletic development circle. And most of the times, since most of you all are nutritionists out here, you all very well know this circle, where nutrition, skill training, fitness is definitely taken care of. And it's a known fact that when a child is into sport, of course, skills is very important. Of course, fitness has been a major awareness area now that has got created. There is also nutrition, which is very, very important. But what we also need to look at to complete the circle is, we have to talk about the psychological aspects or the mental toughness aspects, which the coaches as well as the parents need to also understand what it is all about. Because what happens is, we see the other 3, that is fitness, skills, or even nutrition. The results of it are very, very visible to all of us. Okay, if there is any injury happening, even if there is any past injury that has happened, and if the recovery has taken place, it's very, very visible to all of us. But that's not the case when it comes to mental toughness or athletes suffering from mental injuries. And that is something as sports psychologists and as coaches and parents, like in the ecosystem, all of us need to take care of, that even mental toughness is not only for the athletes, but the way we handle our kids and our athletes is something of a responsibility on us as well. So it's a role of coaches, parents, as well as athletes to see to it that we complete this athletic development circle so that we can actually reach the potential that we are really looking at, and we can actually bring out the talent that the athlete or the kid has in him or her. Yeah, next slide. So what is positive coaching all about? We've heard, maybe all of you all must have heard this term quite a lot, what positive coaching is all about. And as I said, positive coaching is not only for the coaches, but it's for all of us who are into this ecosystem. So looking at the definition, specific and real feedback that is balanced and which focuses on developing the athlete's strengths as well as their weaknesses. So the main focus over here is especially on the feedback. And feedback, I mean, is it could be verbal, it could be non-verbal, it could be through your expressions, it could be through your the kind of actions that you do when the athlete is playing. So all of this is something what we call it as positive feedback or a negative feedback that goes through an athlete. So there are so many aspects that come into positive coaching. The mainly that I'm concentrating on is the feedback. And feedback, again, the maybe a myth is positive coaching is all about giving positive feedback, but it is not positive feedback, but it is positive as well as negative feedback, and recognizing the strength areas as well as the weaknesses of the athlete, and how do you handle all of these and encourage athlete to still go forward. So that is what is positive coaching all about. So there are certain things that are included in positive coaching. One of the most important things is, I always, this is my favorite, where when I'm speaking to the parents or when I'm speaking to the coaches, I always cover this when I talk about winning centered as well as excellence centered approach. And Vardhani has also covered this point before.
Mugdha, there? I think she got stuck. I'll just check. She's joining in a minute. There's some issue with the network. Mugdha, you're there?
Hello. Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. I think, can you all see me, because I can't see myself on the screen.
No, we can see you.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm so sorry for this. Just a second. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Fine. So I was at the first point, which I was saying, talking about winning centered as well as excellence centered, where I was mentioning that we always look at sports, or we always consider sports where we have to go for a win or a result oriented approach. But in positive coaching, what we generally look at is how we have to turn this around and look at it as an excellence centered approach. Because the more we what is excellence centered approach is, we are encouraging our athletes and our kids to not only look at winning or not only look at the results, but how actually the processes that they are putting in place is going to actually help them to perform. So if, as parents and coaches, if we turn around our approach and our concepts when it comes to positive coaching, if we'll have to shift it from winning centered approach to especially the excellence centered approach. That's one. Second thing that gets covered into positive coaching is teach how to bounce back from mistakes rather than not making mistakes at all. Since again, I am coming from an athletic background and I'm working in the field of sports psychology, I see and interact with a lot of coaches as well as athletes. And what I usually get to see, or what I have gone through, is we always get some kind of comments like, you're not supposed to do this, or you just see to it that you're not making mistakes when you are doing a particular stroke, or just see to it that you are avoiding any kind of mistakes when you're going in a competition. So the kind of message that our athletes are getting is, we're not supposed to make mistakes. But when we are talking about positive coaching, what we need to include in positive coaching is, and make our athletes more resilient, because this is the biggest concept that we always talk about in mental training, as to making our athletes more resilient. And one of the ways to do that is help them how they have to bounce back and make them very comfortable in spite of making mistakes, how they can actually bounce back and help them at that moment. What is it that they really need to um, insert out there, so that in spite of making mistakes, they are very, very comfortable with it, and they can actually bounce back and continue with their performance. Because when we are looking from the athlete's perspective, the moment they are getting scared of making mistakes, their performance is actually getting hampered. The third, when we are talking about self-confidence, and when we are talking about mental training, we always have self-confidence on the top of the list. But again, there is a mistake done from the coach's side as well as from the parent side as well, that we expect our athletes to be confident only at the time of the matches, or we expect confidence to be seen only at the competition time. But what I always, as a sports psychologist, I always encourage coaches and parents to say, to basically encourage their confidence right from their training approach, because these seeds of confidence are sown right into their training, right through their training. Because if they are looking at their maybe growth happening in their training itself, that is going to show them how the self-confidence is building, how their self-esteem is building at the time of the competition. And the fourth one is, again, one of my favorites, which I say when we are talking about feedback, especially, it's a kind of a sandwich approach that we look at. And if, again, parents and coaches can integrate this kind of an approach into their system when they are interacting and guiding their players, is a sandwich approach. When we are giving a feedback, we always say, there's a picture over here on the screen. We can see that there is, there is a burger which we can see over here on the screen, where you can see the bread on top and below, and there is a salad in between. So this is a kind of feedback method that I always encourage the parents and the coaches to use is, on top of it, whenever the athlete is coming back from the race, whether the performance is good or whether the performance is bad, the first important thing is how we give a feedback to our players. And the first layer is a positive feedback. Even if the athlete has lost, it's very, very important that you recognize what are the good things that the athlete has done in the race. Extract the positives, explain the athlete that you have done these things very well in the race, and we are really happy that you put in efforts, and that's a kind of a positive feedback that even the athlete is expecting from us. The second layer is a constructive feedback. So even though the athlete has made certain mistakes, we also have to make them realize and say to some extent that, of course, we know that you've lost the race, but it is okay. You could have done one or two things better. And the third layer is a positive feedback again, where you discuss about what could be the strategies that as a coach and as a parent that you can actually include in your training, which can help to better the performance in the next competition or the tournament. So these are a few aspects that are included in positive coaching. Yeah. Vardhini, next slide. Yeah, so when we are talking about positive coaching, I have actually, I've made two columns out here where I wanted to show the difference between the traditional coaching model as well as the positive coaching model. So what it is all about is what you all can see on the screen. So one of the major things that we've grown in this kind of a traditional coaching model is where we see coaches as well as parents, they're actually reacting to the poor performances of the athlete. Whereas we have to actually change this approach to positive coaching, where positive coaching meaning proactively facilitate good performance. So what I spoke about right now about the sandwich method, that is something that has to get integrated into this positive coaching. The second part of traditional coaching model is intervention oriented. We always talk about even when parents approach us for sports psychology sessions, we get to hear from the parents that, mere bacche ne competition mein acha nahi kiya, he's developed fear, or he's undergoing stress or tremendous amount of pressure. So these are the kind of things that we are coming to you as a sports psychologist, and that is something what they are actually looking at it from the intervention oriented perspective. Now, when we are talking about positive coaching, what we need to make a shift out here is it has to be more of a prevention oriented. So even before we see athletes going through stresses and pressures, what we actually need to start doing the intervention is right during their practice sessions and right during their training sessions. So more than waiting for athletes going through stresses and pressures, we have to take care of it that they wouldn't experience any kind of stresses and pressures into the competition, and the care needs to be taken right on the everyday basis. The third is we again see that in the traditional style of coaching is we always have the tendency to address weaknesses, as I've again mentioned it in the earlier slide, which we have to again turn around and we have to concentrate on the strength areas that the athlete is showing. The moment we start recognizing and identifying the strength areas of the athletes, it definitely has a correlation to their confidence level. And the fourth one is we usually seek compliance, as even Vardhini has spoken about commitment. We usually hear parents and coaches saying that, you have to do certain things or you have to follow certain things. You need to be committed to your sport. You need to, be self-disciplined. So this is where the demands are put from the coach's side or from the parent side. But what we need to look at as parents and coaches, where we have to again turn around our approach, is build commitment towards the sport. We have to see to it that how we can encourage so that the athletes would become more committed, and rather than doing a dictatorship approach or using a dictatorship approach, we have to use it as a more friendly approach towards our athletes so that we get better commitment from the athletes. Yeah, next slide. Okay, so what are some of the effective ways of coaching? So let's look at what are the kind of habits that we can actually start putting in when we are interacting with our athletes so that we get a kind of a positive result out of it. one of the most important things is explain the expectations to our kids. I have recently had two athletes shifting their coaches, and the only reason is because they are not aligned or they are not on the same page when the expectations are mentioned. The coach is not very sure and not very expressive what he wants out of the athlete, and the athlete is clueless as to what my coach is expecting out of me. And what happens is that basically results into low confidence, that basically results into fear as well as pressure. So if we can put the habit into, as a parent as well as a coach, as to explain the expectations, maybe sit across with the athlete and explain to them what, as parents or coaches, what our expectations are. And if we're doing that, the kind of result that we see out of it is there is an alignment. Everybody is on the same page. Otherwise, we see too many ups and downs happening. There is no kind of alignment. The coach is on a different track, the parents are on a different page, and the athletes are completely clueless. So if we explain the expectations to them, if we express the expectations, the alignment is much, much better, and the results of it are much better. The second one is always involve athletes in discussions, ask questions to them, whether they are okay with the kind of expectations that are put in front of them. And when we are asking questions and when we are involving our players into the discussions, we are engaging them in the discussions, because we are also teaching them to be more responsible athletes and not being very dependent athletes. Third is involve players in the discussion. So whatever decision I've heard initially, I think before we started with our presentation, I think one of you all said that, our kids are going through too many competitions. There are too many tournaments that they really need to go through. And there are some sports where every weekend they are actually playing tournaments. So one of the main important things is, and I've got athletes saying that, I don't want to play so many tournaments, but my coaches and parents are just forcing me to get into it. So involve players, ask them whether they are wanting to play these kind of tournaments. If involvement of the players is done, they are getting more ownership from the players. And that again is what is teaching them to be more responsible, to be more independent when it comes to thinking. The next one is measuring results. It's very, very important that from the coach's side and from the parents' side, that we help athletes to always be maybe infuse the system of analyzing their results after every tournament and after every match that they come through, because that also shows and improves more accountability towards your sport. And the last one is appreciate players. Whatever it is, whether they have done poorly, whether they have lost the race, the most important thing is they have taken part into the race. They have actually, hello? Yeah, so they have taken part into the race, they have put in hard work, and they have committed themselves to a particular sport. So always what we need to see is we have to appreciate the players, whatever it is. Yeah, the next one. So it's very important to see what are the different elements of positive coaching. So it all covers into a nutshell what I have spoken earlier, and this is what is positive coaching all about. Focus on efforts. So athletes who are coached to focus on efforts will experience reduced anxiety, because the focus is on the efforts and it's not on the results. And when we shift our attention onto more of efforts that the athlete has put into their sport, we are obviously reducing the kind of anxieties and the kind of pressures that they are going through. And what we are encouraging them or increasing is their self-confidence. The second one is fill their emotional tanks. Now, what do I mean by emotional tanks? Is parents and coaches, we always need to understand the kind of emotions that they are going through. In mental training, we always give importance to the emotions that athletes go through. whether it's happiness, whether it is sadness, whether it is pressure, whether it is anxiety, whether it is stress. All of these are the kind of emotions that our players are experiencing. And if you are not really aware of what kind of emotions the athlete is experiencing, then again, it's going to be very, very difficult for our athletes to actually perform at their potential. The third one is model good behavior. It's very important that as coaches and as parents, we basically are good role models to them. I have seen, especially this happens in tennis tournaments, and at the domestic level, we don't have linesmen, and usually that is the scene that the umpires give a wrong decision. Usually, if there is a linesman, he or she gives a wrong decision, and parents are the ones who actually go and fight with the umpires. So this is a kind of a maybe a wrong projection, a wrong way of tackling the situation, because this is what our kids are also going to learn, our athletes are also going to learn. So as parents and coaches, we have to see to it that what kind of a behavior that we are actually putting in front of our kids, because that is what they are going to absorb. So parents and coaches should respect others and also encourage their children to do the same. The next one is it's very, very important to engage in open dialogue. This is what we've spoken earlier as well. It's recommended that coaches and parents ask open-ended questions, which I have shown to you all in the earlier slide as well. The more you have open dialogues, the more you have discussions on the table after they come back from their training sessions, after they come back from their tournaments, the more is going to be a kind of a open relation that we are going to see between the athletes and the coaches and as well as the parents. And the last is it's extremely important to help athletes to develop routines. Routines is what we, again, as mental trainers, give a lot of importance to, and what we call it as pre-game routines. So what we are encouraging and emphasizing more is, again, ultimately the efforts that the athletes are putting from their side, and the emphasis is not on the results that they are going through. So all of these elements of positive coaching, what we are looking at is encouraging our athletes to do well, to reach their potential, and not only focusing on the kind of results or the result oriented approach. Yeah, I think we can take questions now.
Yeah, we are open for questions.
Yeah.
I would like a question, Mugdha.
Yeah, sure.
I'm Geeta, and I'm from Bangalore. So Mugdha, hi. How do you also deal with parental pressure? Many times we have a great equation and a channel with the athlete, but what do you do with the overbearing parent?
Okay. See, of course, I understand that there are too many commitments and demands, even as coaches and parents that we go through. But it's very, very important, and this is what why this tried is because as sports psychologists and as mental trainers, we do work with parents as well, and it's very, very important that we teach our athletes as well as our parents to compartmentalize certain issues that we face in our personal lives as well. Because if all of these issues are getting entangled, then what is going to happen is the pressure and the stress is going to come on the athletes, and that's going to actually impact the athletes. So of course, we take sessions with the parents, we help them to compartmentalize, we help them to sort out things. If need be, we also recommend them to a psychiatrist or a psychologist if they are not able to handle certain pressures.
I wish we could say that to the parent.
No, but I'll tell you what, now it's I think the parents have also become quite aware of all of these things, and they are they're quite willing to go to either psychiatrist or psychologist, which was not the case maybe I would say 10-12 years back.
Yes, that's a tricky one, because to strike a balance between the work going on with the athlete, and then also the constant interference of the parent.
Right. Yeah, and that's where the communication with the parents is very, very important along with the kids, because we are not only training the kids because they are performing, but as we have said that it, the main support comes from their parents, and parents also need to be guided in a proper direction as to what kind of support that they need to provide to their athletes as well.
So maybe if I can request you to kind of scaffold this and give one or two practical tips on when you say compartmentalize, because I'm a dietitian. How can I, kind of use this in order to convey the message? Maybe if you can break that down and, in a layman term, give us one or two actionable, things that you could practice.
Okay. See, one of the things quite common that I have seen is work pressures on the parents as well. Okay, so they are working maybe, for example, in a corporate world, and the kind of pressures that they are experiencing, they're not able to express or remove that anger over there in the office. So what happens is that gets, easy victims are the kids. Yeah,
and also the support staff.
Also the support. Yes. So one of the main important things is, again, more than intervention, if we can actually get into the preventive action, what I suggest the coaches is right in the beginning, when they are starting with the academy or when they are starting with the camps, it's very important that they do orientation programs and kind of, have the expectations put in place, what the coach is expecting from the parent and what the coach is expecting from the athlete. That's one. We can also have individual sessions done with the parents to handle and tackle certain issues that, as I said, that they are experiencing in their personal life. And it all depends on, what kind of issues they are facing. It could be, like, as I said, at the corporate level, the kind of level that they are working, it all depends on what pressures they are experiencing out there and what are their expectations, because usually the pressures that they are experiencing and the kind of expectations that they have from their kids actually has a clash. So as mental trainers, if we can help them separate these things out, that is a kind of a better approach that we can take.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a question from Rudula. How do you draw a line between encouraging an athlete and pushing too much to pursue sports?
Okay, I think Mugdha, you want to go ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay, very interesting question, but I think it's about making them a little more independent in their decision. Okay, so I know it's if you're talking about younger players, like under 12, under 13 or whoever, but just encouraging them to take the decisions in the sport is what the role of the parent should be. Okay, because pushing them would mean, I'll tell you what is it. It's a thin line. It could be like say consecutive losses, and now they need to win. So now you need to win now. You need to win now. Could be pushing them to pursue that sport or to pursue that as a career. Okay, but asking them to self-analyze and then tell me, like, as a parent, okay, now where you have gone wrong and now how you want to change, is possibly just encouraging. Okay, so that could be like, as just an example I just gave. So that could be like making them more accountable for their decision to pursue the sport is what you can do as a parent. You can't just push them and maybe to win or even to go for practice, because sometimes that also happens that they may not have interest, they may not have inclination. But again, what Mugdha mentioned about even role modeling, that you need to do it yourself so that they can also pursue it. So maybe that could be one way that you can at least get their interest started. All right, so yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, Vardhini. So Tejas has raised his hand, so you can ask the question, Tejas.
Yeah, so let's say a coach has been training their athletes for 2-3 years in the traditional dynamic, and now they happen to stumble across this information where positive coaching is really important. Sandwiching the improvements in between positive things is important. Now it is very, very difficult to change dynamics, especially 2-3 year old, and this dynamic where the coach is the respected authority and they have to suddenly change their whole demeanor. This is going to be a major transition. So how would you suggest going about this? Some practical tips and some principles to keep in mind.
Okay, one of the things I would say is, of course, explaining the coaches about the advantages of positive coaching. And once you start looking and seeing the advantages of it, I'm sure the coaches are going to be absolutely ready to make this shift. Second is, of course, when there is a kind of, as you were saying about, or we were talking about mental training approaches or psychological aspects. But when it comes to even the technical aspects or fitness wise, there are certain things which are not really working for the athletes. When you see that certain things are not working technically, the coaches are very open to changing it, taking that approach. So it goes in a similar way when it comes to mental training as well. So that's another way that you can explain it to the coaches. Okay, and ultimately, when we are looking at the positive outcomes of it, I'm sure the coaches are going to be really ready to adapt this kind of an approach. So of course, as I said, when it has to be a kind of a psychological shift or a mental shift, it is going to be very difficult. It's not an easy thing to do because you've been into it since a very long time. It has been a traditional approach with you. The coaches are really used to that kind, following that kind of an approach. But shifting is possible, and if you really help them understand the advantages of it, I'm sure the coaches are going to be more open towards that.
My question was more aligned with the once the coach has understood that these are the benefits. Now it's like changing this whole dynamic is a very, very big task. Like, have you had coaches who just went from the traditional to positive directly, or is there a transition phase where you tell them do these 3 things now, then next week start doing these 3 things? Like, what is this approach?
Of course, it's a kind of a phase-wise approach that we really need to do. We cannot load the coach with too many expectations and too many things to do in one go. Of course, it's going to be a very, very specific approach that we are going to follow with the coaches by giving certain tasks to do initially, so that they are able to implement the kind of things that we are suggesting to them quite easily in the approach. So of course, it's not going to be very, very easy. It is going to be really difficult. But again, we are there to support them as mental trainers, and we are there to assess and help them at any point of time that they need.
Could you mention the first 3 steps, like, or these 3 things we could work on, like broad principles or some specific examples, like the easiest to work on?
Okay, one of the things is, see, it's not very straightforward, as I would say, because it all depends on initially what kind of approaches that the coaches were using and what are the kind of expectations that we are having now for the coaches to change. So it all depends. It's very, very subjective. But as I said, if it was a kind of a winning centered approach that I've mentioned it before, or even Vardhani has mentioned about it, we'll have to slowly bring or explain the coach what are the kind of disadvantages when we are only putting the pressure of winning and getting the medals into what is the kind of process-based approach that the coach needs to follow. So when we are bringing their mind onto the processes, we are bringing them back onto the present moment, which is again one of the most important things when we talk about mental training. And when we are infusing these 2 things in our training program, that is a process-based approach and a present-based approach, we are obviously taking our athletes toward getting their performance and performing at their potential and maybe at their fullest. So it's a kind of a very structured approach, but it all depends on what is the kind of approach right now the coach is using.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions we have from the participants?
Yeah, hi, I do have a question. So I'm basically a football mother, okay, and a soccer mother, and I see a lot of, as you mentioned, like the sidelines, the parents know everything. They know more than the coaches, and they probably, if they could, they would probably be coaching Messi and Ronaldo. So how do you deal with such, I mean, we can't now obviously see our child is going to be playing amongst them. And you cannot go and tell them to just shut up, which is, I mean, normally that happens. So how do you handle such how do you prepare your child for these kind of scenarios?
Should I, Mugdha? Okay. Very interesting question again, because yeah, I mean, you will encounter such parents, other parents, and it's important, like you rightly said, to groom your child. So of course, as sports psychologists, we develop that kind of a quality as well, which is like we speak about resilience, okay, and controlling the controllables. So things that you can't control, you shouldn't pay heed to. Things that you can control are the only things that you need to focus on. That's how we start training your minds. Okay, so even if things like some kind of self-talk that you can train the child with, wherein you have an external say in person, be it the parents, be it the referee, someone who makes a wrong decision or someone who speaks something which is not exactly right. Okay, how do you ignore that and move ahead is all based on your focus. So the focus should definitely lie on controlling your controllables, which could be just handling the ball at that moment, or just focusing on your skill, or just hitting the ball to the goal, okay, and not paying attention to all these things. So something similar what we see in cricket is sledging. Okay, it's the same thing, but the only thing, of course, the channel is different. Parents, players, I think they handle better because they are peers, whereas the parents, then it kind of could put an impact on their own confidence as athletes. But again, it's all about just handling how you can control what you can control and not think a lot about what you can't.
So you actually make statements like ignore what they are doing. So in terms of what are the actual direct statements that you make to your child? Because sometimes you're always torn between, you don't want to bias the child towards a certain parent, but if you know that a certain parent has, and probably it's, like someone close, friends, someone whom they always see. So it always becomes a little bit of a challenge because you don't want as you said, right, you want them to make that informed decision.
Yes.
But at the same time, you are worried by making these kind of statements, you are actually coloring their thoughts. So it's a tightrope. So what do you say? Do we directly say that to them, like just ignore them whatever happens? Because I've seen matches stop.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there's one thing that I also mentioned, which I thought which you had mentioned early on, especially with these kids. I see they lose their confidence and they are not able to pick it up and move on. Like you always see that, right? The first 20 minutes a goal is scored by the opposition team, and then you see everyone on that team with their heads hanging down.
Yeah.
They're not even looking at each other and talking. So they're already having these kind of situations. So then can you make such directed comments to them saying ignore this parent? Is it okay to make those kind of statements? I mean, I know you might come back and say it depends on your child, depends on your interaction, but
one of the things I would say here is when you're saying ignore the comments, when we are talking about, as Vardhani just spoke about self-talk, there are certain ways that we usually encourage the athletes to use a self-talk. First of all, it has to be very, very positive. When we are talking about ignore the comments, what we are actually trying to do is we are encouraging them to focus on the negatives. Okay, what we need to do is if you can actually change the way you give instructions to your child and make it more positive and process based, I think ultimately we are trying to reach the result. Okay, but by doing it in a negative way is going to be more harmful and high chances that the child will not really reach the result. But by focusing on more positive things and the things which are under your control, and that is your process, if you can use your self-talk or give comments in that manner, that's actually going to help the child. So rather than saying ignore, if you can use any of the processes, right, like, maybe whatever certain processes that they use in football, okay, like, be more defensive, or like, look at the kick that you are actually doing, or look at your position. So all of these are the kind of things that will immediately give them a message, what they need to do right there at that moment, because that is going to lead to a positive outcome. Yeah. Rather than, only focusing on what you need to ignore. because then the mind is going to be blocked as to, okay, this is what I really need to spend more energy on, to ignoring these things. So the attention is diverted and they're not really focused on the task that is in their hands, and that is what they need to focus on.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, like simple things like, focus on the ball, or focus on your dribble, anything that will. And I think specifically for the situation that you ask, you could definitely have a personal conversation later on with your child on just asking how they felt after this happened, or after, the parents made this remark or whatever it is. And that could be done more in a personal space between you and your son.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Do we have any other questions? Okay.
Any tips for getting the child to open up, like children who are reserved especially?
Yeah, if we ask them that, come on, let's talk and let's discuss about what you have felt today or how was your competition, they're not going to, especially those who are introverted and reserved, they're definitely not going to come and speak to you suddenly, because they'll feel, what's wrong with my parents, suddenly they've started asking questions this way. But by the by, when you are there on the ground, just striking a conversation which is very, very naturally done, is something that you can actually start using that approach. So whichever it is, like, just ask them, how was your workout today, or how was your practice today? Just give them certain cues to open up. And the moment you do that, rather than judging what they have done, that's very, very important, that as parents and coaches, we need to keep in mind, rather than judging them, just have a very open communication and put the ball into their court and let them say what they have felt about the training or about their competition on that particular day.
Or I think even like Mugdha said, more naturally. So like, in a very casual conversations, like about their role model or like what they feel, like, that will encourage them to just speak about certain things, like on a very general basis. And something about their shared interest or like their interest, and what you may not know about. So, anything that way that will help them just open up to you much more. Yeah.
Very important that you keep the direction towards your child, rather than saying, because I've again heard many parents saying that, what happened to you today, how the other player has defeated you today. Okay, so of course you are taking more interest in their game, but what comes into picture is the comparison. And that is what, as parents, that's the most important thing that we need to avoid doing it. The comparison has to be between their own performance, rather than encouraging them to compare themselves with somebody else, because that's one of the sources where the pressures and stresses actually start trickling down.
Yeah, and I was more so asking along the coach / nutritionist lines. I'm not a parent, so like the reserved children, like one thing that I've got to start a conversation is talking about their favorite sports person. Like, did you see Ronaldo score a goal day before yesterday? And the backflip kick was just amazing. This is one way that I have found. Any other practical tips or practical experiences that you can share? This is how you got a reserved child to open up.
Similar things only, I think. I also remember speaking just about, so there have been sessions where we don't speak specifically about mental training, and we just end up speaking about the recent match that happened, and then words just start flowing out of their mouth. So that way, then it's very good to build that rapport. See, ultimately it's about opening up, but also building a trust. Sometimes they may not be very open, even though they're not very chatty. But in such cases, you can also encourage them to write. I think that's what we do. I don't know, from you can ask them, especially from a nutritionist standpoint, maybe just write down whatever you think about, whatever you expect them to speak. Okay, that also can help actually.
I didn't get it exactly. I'm supposed to ask them to write what I want them to speak.
Yeah, or like say, suppose if you're talking from a nutritionist or a coach's standpoint, suppose today, if you ask them as a coach, how did you feel about today's game? Okay, if you ask them something like that, कि क्या लगा, कि कैसे था आज का game? So then they like, pata nahi. They might say something like that, just a short answer to end the conversation. Then you can just tell them, okay, you know what, just do one thing, write about it and tell it to me tomorrow. So that
Okay, this sounds like a very nice tip. I'm going to write and keep this down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I want to share. I think I use this tip because with some of the athletes or younger athletes or even athletes who don't share, I just give them a blank paper and I tell them draw your plate. How was your plate in the morning for breakfast or for lunch or whatever? I just whatever you like. If you have color pencils, color. So just to open up, and then I also get to know what they had for the meal, and I then can compare. So I think that tip I use with most of the athletes. Okay.
Thank you.
So yeah. Any questions? Okay. I think it was a very wonderful session, and I request Namrata to give the vote of thanks. Namrata, are you there?
Not audible.
Namrata, you're on mute.
Yeah. She was there. Yeah, we can see you, Namrata. I think you're on mute. No, we can't hear you. I think she's reconnecting. I think till Namrata joins, can I ask one question? Mugdha or Vardhini?
Yes,
So,
yes, please.
sometimes at athletes, we realize that some of the athletes have issues with their body. Most of I have a lot of gymnasts under me, so appearance is one of the factor in their games, and they want a certain body image. They compare themselves with other athletes who have a lean figure, and they think that because they have that figure, they will perform better, and then they end up eating less, and we see that they are turning towards disordered eating or eating disorders. So and some of the parents, they're not coming from a good background also, in socioeconomic background, so sometimes they don't understand sports psychology. They think my child is no, he's not having any mental this thing or something. So how to make them understand, or even sometimes coaches, when we are going at places where it's not a metro city, some small districts in some of the states. So how can we make them understand? We don't want to use something which will hurt them, or so what terminology, or in simple language, how we can tell them to meet a psychologist, or have some counseling.
Yeah, see, basically what happens, but I'm sure it's now, as I said earlier, the awareness is to a greater extent when we talk about mental trainers or sports psychologists, or even for that matter, psychologists. So I think now what I have seen in last few years, the biggest change that has happened is they have tried, everybody is, accepting the role of a psychologist, especially when it comes to sports. So it's not so difficult as it was earlier. But I think what coaches can actually start talking to the athletes or even the parents is how they can actually, as we've seen the athletic development circle. So if they can use these kind of things to help explain the athletes that the way skill training, the way fitness, and the way mental, the
I think Mugdha is stuck.
I guess Mugdha has a network issue again. Vardhini, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll digress a bit from what Mugdha also said. And to answer your question, Apurva, how do you what can you do in order to encourage them to go and visit a professional? Is definitely you can, say something around, it's something like, if you can relate it to a physical disorder, like say a cancer, of course you will not, stop yourself from going to a doctor. Similarly, if it is like just, the beginning of something what you feel could lead to something worse, okay, rather than going there, it's good to go visit a psychologist to prevent that kind of a thing. Okay, so you can always use a prevention as a key, because visiting a psychologist is not only when you have a diagnosed mental issue, but it's also to prevent, so that you do not go into that step. Yeah, Mugdha. Mute.
Yeah, major network issue from my side.
I was telling Apurva that in order to encourage them to go to a psychologist, you can always tell them it's better to prevent a mental health issue. So hence you need to visit one rather than experiencing a mental health. Yeah, that's one thing what I thought I was.
Yes. And I think one of the also things is, I have seen now most of the clubs or academies have started having psychologists on board in the club. So that also makes it easier for the athletes to approach a sports psychologist and keep it very normal rather than, exaggerating it too much.
Yeah.
I would like to say about one thing, which as a dentist, that what I have come across is, eating disorders is one issue wherein I think the dentist, the nutritionist, and the psychologist, all the three of them, I think they need to, work together to, make athlete overall healthy mentally, dentally, nutritionally, from all aspects. So what do you have to say on that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's always a multidisciplinary approach, always.
So everybody who's linked to an athlete, everybody plays a very important role towards their development. So whether it's a dentist, nutritionist, a trainer, a physio, everybody, I think, plays a very important role.
Yes, definitely. And I think, that's why ASNFS also, it was same thing that, all these disciplines should come under one umbrella. And I think we are doing amazing. The association is also, promoting all this type of disciplines and asking experts to take sessions. So more awareness is created in different fields. So, I request Namrata.
Yeah, Purva, thank you so much.
Yes, hi.
Hi, I'm Namrata Pramod, nutritionist working with Sports Authority of India and a very proud member of ASNFS. I would like to thank the speakers for today, Mugdha and Vardhini. I think it was a very wonderful session and an interactive session. That is what I would like to call it as, especially to keep the audience glued to the session on a Saturday evening. And Vardhini, especially I like that photo that you showed, where the athlete being the plant and the coach and the parent nurturing the athlete. I think it makes more sense to have the confidence of both the coach and the parent. Even as nutritionists, sometimes we do face challenges if even the parent or the coach is not agreeing with us. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Kasturi Senre, Meena Godia ma'am, and Subhadra Mandalika ma'am for giving us such a beautiful platform such as ASNFS, and also like the sessions that they're conducting. I would like to thank Gitanjali ma'am for giving me this opportunity. And I would also like to thank the core committee members and the organizing secretary. And last but not the least, the audience who have glued to the session today. I would like to thank them. for making this session a success. Okay, thank you all of you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you so much.
And
Thanks
thanks
all of you.
specifically Geetanjali ma'am for calling us, inviting us to do this session. Thank you. Thanks Apurva for conducting the session too very
Thank you
well.
Vardhini and Mugdha for a
Thank you.
session.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it was good to have a good group out here and good questions. Yeah, that was really nice to have.
And we are looking forward for some more sessions from you.
Sure.
Sure. We'll be more than happy to. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend. Bye. Bye.